Marketing is a combination of sociology, psychology, and anthropology. I thought that is the coolest thing ever. I want to do that.
Hey, my guest on this episode is Mark Schaefer. Mark is a globally recognized author of 10 books, including Marketing Rebellion, one of my favorite books from the 2018-19 era, and his newest book, Audacious, How Humans Win in an AI Marketing World. And that's why I reached out to Mark to have him on this podcast because, man, this is the hottest topic maybe ever. And I wanted to do an episode on how to stay relevant as a marketer in the world of AI.
I mean, we talk about our tech stack, right? We talk about our AI prompts, but at the bottom of it, it's about really understanding people.
Mark teaches marketing at Rutgers. He runs Schaefer Marketing Solutions and writes a influential blog all about marketing. Go check it out. Google his name, Mark Schaefer. He's put out 11 books and they're all awesome. And I love them because he really talks about the timeless principles in marketing. He says his whole career can be summed up by basically trying to chase this one thing, which is how do you separate the signal from the noise in marketing? We had an awesome conversation all about his book.
The book is about where do the humans fit in this thing? And this idea of shared experiences is really important.
But most importantly, what you can do as a marketer to stay relevant in the world of AI. And here's my little hint before we get into this episode. It has everything to do with being human. Enjoy my conversation with Mark Schaefer.
1, 2, 3, 4. Exit.
All right, so my guest today is somebody that I read. It's not your first book, Mark, but I read the first book that put me on you. It's called Marketing Rebellion. Came out in about 2019, and I remember devouring that when I was at Drift. And the key message in that book was about basically how to win by being human. And I remembered that I really liked your stuff. Then I think it was Tim, who's the CMO at Ahrefs, SEO company, SEO tool. He posted he was sitting on a float in a pool reading your book on vacation. And I was like, that's the same guy. And I look it up and the title of the book is Audacious, How Humans Win in an AI Marketing World. And damn if there hasn't been a topic that is more relevant to this audience today. And I just shot you a note and you're like, yeah, I'm happy to come on the podcast. So Mark Schaefer, good to have you. Can you do a brief introduction on who the heck you are?
Your world is certainly very close to my heart. I spent most of my career in B2B marketing. And I guess it's been 15, 16 years ago now. I started my own business, started consulting, and started a blog. And the blog sort of took off and was invited to write books. I wrote the first book on influence marketing before anybody even knew it was a word. And I never.
Wait, hold on. What year was that book?
2012.
Okay. So I work for this guy called David Cancel, who's the CEO at Drift. And he was the first person to teach me this. And he's like, he used to call me nephew. He's like, nephew, learn. He's like, what you're going to learn is that all of this stuff has been done before. Everything that seems new is old. And so he's like, go study the timeless stuff. Right. And so I love examples like that because I often talk about like Seth Godin wrote a book in 1999 called Permission Marketing.
Sure.
Right? Like these things go way back. And so anybody that's out here being like, in our world, they're like, oh, B2B influencer marketing is all the rage right now. And here I am, Mark Schaefer, who wrote a book on that topic 13 years ago.
Yeah. And I try to write my books that way, actually. I try, I try to make them evergreen enough that they've got some legs, that they'll last for a while, that they'll be relevant. And the book you mentioned, Marketing Rebellion, I mean, I've written 11 books in all now, and that was my best-selling book, at least so far, and people still love it today. It's being used as a textbook in about 50 different universities because I put a lot of effort into it, and I think I called the shot on that one, and it's especially relevant today. And I think this new book is going to be the same.
Yeah. Okay. And so now, you could check out, go to Mark's website, businessesgrow.com, and you'll see all of his proof. We like to have guests that have the receipts on this show, and he does. But before you got into what got you to be this guy with strong point of view about marketing? I'm guessing you weren't just like laying around being like, I'm going to make a career writing marketing books. It seems like you're well connected. You clearly have experience in this world. What was the marketer Mark before author Mark?
Well, I I started out as a journalism major in my undergraduate program, and in my junior year, I took a marketing class, and I opened up Principles of Marketing by Philip Kotler, and it started off by saying marketing is a combination of sociology, psychology, and anthropology. I thought, that is the coolest thing ever. I want to do that. Marketing is all things human. And we don't normally talk about it that way anymore. I mean, we talk about our tech stack, right? We talk about our AI prompts, but at the bottom of it, it's about really understanding people. And I just loved it. I just loved it. And so long story short, I got into this career and ended up being a marketing leader at a Fortune 100 company, and had an opportunity to go out and do my own thing, and started consulting, and never looked back. I started my business when social media was getting hot, and started a blog. And at that point, all the bloggers were basically kids, and I was someone that had 27 years of international business experience, and I had a different perspective. And I saw, what I was observing, Dave, was a lot of the information was just, it was more than wrong. It was dangerous. It was like a really naive way to look at business, how business really works, how marketing really works through this, authentic lens of social media. And so after blogging for about 6 to 9 months, I decided I gotta tell people what's really going on here, because
I gotta tell them the
this is
truth.
this is bullshit.
So what was it that I love that? And I like type notes in my Slack after, as I like to take my own show notes and share them with our team. But I love this. We obsess over the tech stack. This is paraphrasing. We obsess over the tech stack. We talk about AI prompts, but marketing is really just understanding people. And I love that. We talk to a lot of members and other marketers, and it's like it's not the sexiest advice in the world, but basically every marketing channel has been proven to work. TikTok works, email works, YouTube works. Like there's some example of someone somewhere who has found a marketing channel that works, and then, but yet we spend most of the time like debating over, to your point, like this tech tool or this tech stack thing or that, or should we do this on Instagram versus TikTok? And sometimes I want to shout from the hills that it's like, it is this thing, Mark. It's really about understanding people. What was the biggest like bullshit thing though that went off to you? Like when you say this is dangerous, and I've seen some people talking about this lately.
There's so much.
What is it?
Here's the biggest thing. And this is a generalization. We can get into specifics if you like, but the generalization was, so I grew up in this company that was kind of run by engineers and accountants. And so they rewarded debate. They rewarded dissent. They really wanted to know what you thought, and they wanted to get to the right answer. In the marketing world, it's guru-led. So no matter what some guru says, that becomes sort of like a guiding principle that just gets stuck. It's like it becomes a fossil. It was said so long ago, and the leaves are floating to the bottom of the lake, covering it up, and we don't even remember how we got there. And people repeat this stuff, and sometimes it doesn't even make sense. And you just think, have you thought this through? Is this really how you think the world works? And there's very little debate. It's the best practices are basically set by gurus, and then everybody agrees, and then everybody copies each other. And it's easy to copy each other because news spreads so fast. And so the guiding principle of great marketing is not about conformity; it's about non-conformity.
Totally. So I used to live in, we moved now into more of the country, but I used to live in this neighborhood, and it was there's a bunch of houses along this golf course, and this like modern farm style house design, and it became very, very popular. Sure enough, one neighbor, I'm playing golf, I'm a big golfer, I'm walking down the 14th fairway, one neighbor redoing the house, right? What happens over the course of 2 years now? All 12 houses that line that hole on the golf course, 10 out of the 12 have now redesigned the house to be the same freaking design.
Yeah, yeah,
And you may like that design, but
yeah,
I like this as a frame of reference where it's like, if I'm a marketer going into a market, I think the fun opportunity is to be like, okay, these 10 companies that we compete with all do it this way. The step one opportunity is to just not be like them, right?
yeah. And that's sort of the main thesis of the new book is that, I start off with some research that shows how boring the world is, B2B and B2C. And I think the number is around 2/3, around 60 something percent of B2B and B2C marketing inspires like no emotional connection whatsoever. The reaction is either disdain or just a blank. And if there was like a CEO of the advertising industry or the marketing industry that said, "Oh, 2/3 of what we're doing is terrible," they'd be fired. And the people that did this research were so aghast that most of our marketing is so bad. They thought of the most boring thing they could think of, which was a cow eating grass. They made a video of a cow eating grass. They put it through the same research, and it did just about as well as most B2B and B2C marketing. And so now we're living in this world where people are saying, "Oh my gosh, AI is going to come for us." But AI is just piling on. The world's boring and AI is just piling on. So this is an opportunity to say, no, we've got to change the story. The greatest sin we can have is to be ignorable. And we seem to be content with that.
So do you think like, actually, well, first, before I ask you that AI question, but it can't be that we're all just morons, right? Like I know a lot of smart marketers who are maybe trapped at the wrong company. Is there something, in my experience, it's like there are a lot of smart people out there doing marketing. I don't want to say like all the marketing sucks because everyone is dumb. I haven't found that to be
No,
the case. I found
no.
that it's usually there is some like company strategy things that are flawed, and show me a company with a great strategy from a business standpoint, and I'll show you a marketing team that can be successful. Is that where you see it?
Well, I see that I've got a little video on my YouTube channel. It's sort of like a movie trailer for the book. And I start out by saying, it's not your fault. The most people, they want to create, they want to innovate, they want to do better. But we have this infrastructure of fear in our industry. There's a scaffolding of fear holding boring in place. We're afraid uh, of upsetting a customer. We're afraid of losing a customer. We're afraid of becoming the next Bud Light. We're afraid of disrupting an industry where boring has been normalized. We're afraid because if we take a risk, it's going to be hard to get it through the legal department. And so in some industries, boring is regulated. We don't want to go to jail. And there are certain things we need to follow. But sort of the rallying cry of the book is, if you're merely competent because you're afraid, you're vulnerable. AI is going to chew you up and spit you back out.
Well, is that because more people, because all of that stuff is going to be commoditized? Like a
Yeah,
lot of
because
marketing is
it's going to be commoditized. Competent is a commodity.
right.
Competent is ignorable.
You said you were early to have a blog, right? And it was
Yeah,
like at that time, just having a blog was enough. Having a blog and a strong opinion, you didn't have to worry about fighting for traffic. You were just one of the few people doing it. Today, we can write amazing emails and blog posts and articles with AI. So AI is going to eat all that stuff, and then what's left is going to be
it's it's the people who have the courage to be a little crazy, to be raw. I mean, and that's not. It's interesting, Dave, how my book didn't come out that long ago, just a few months ago, but the world is moving so fast that a lot of the things I talk about in the book are already coming true. They're already, you know,
Yeah,
like,
like what? Tell me.
well, I'll give you so one of the themes in the book is about being raw, about being real. And as there's a guy I interview in the book, wrote a whole chapter about him named Michael Krivicka. Michael is the king of viral video. He has had more #1 videos on YouTube than any man alive, any person alive, to be accurate. So the beautiful thing about this book is all the people I talked to spill their secrets. And one of the things he talked about is he said, lots of people try to copy me, but they never can because they polish it. When I create videos, it might be a little out of focus here and there. Maybe the audio wasn't quite right. Maybe there's dust on the lens. He never uses AI. He said, I want something real, raw, with real human reactions and real human emotions. Now, look at some of the stuff that's in the news right now. One of the big aesthetic trends is lo-fi.
Right. Yeah.
What was the big story? I think it was in the Wall Street Journal maybe a week or two ago, where there's this backlash of video game companies. They're spending millions and millions of dollars to make video games that look like movies, and the gamers are saying, no, we just like hanging out with our friends. We like the lo-fi sort of aesthetic. So it's like, gosh, this is
Yeah.
something I just talked about in the book. And you see story after story after story of this backlash against perfection, about this. We're hungry for something real. We're hungry for something that's a little, disruptive.
Yeah. What we started doing events for our business for the first time this year, and the first event we did sold out in like 2 days, and then even the event itself was this unbelievable buzz because people just wanted to hang out. They just want to hang out, and it's like I started to think about it, and I've heard other people. Chris Sacca had a great rant on this, but basically, like in the world of AI, it's going to be like those those real human connections are the things that we're going to crave. Whether it's you've seen the trend now, like raw dogging a flight. No headphones, no water, no internet. You just sit on the flight, and that's supposed to be like being present. We're going to crave the experiences. So that's a good one, talking about like just the quality of the creative. I think about this with B2B a lot. A lot of the ads that I see on LinkedIn, for example, my brain right away knows it's an ad because it looks like the creative director approved the safeness of that ad.
Yeah, that's another thing that Krivicka talked about. He said, never make an ad. If you start something with a logo or a celebrity, immediately you either tune it out or you look at it through the filter of they're selling me something. He said, create something that connects, has this emotional resonance that most marketing doesn't have. Then you see who made it at the end. And you say, oh, that's pretty clever. But I want to build on this comment you made about live events, because this is a key idea in the book. And again, the book is about where do the humans fit in this thing? And this idea of shared experiences is really important. I dissect this idea called collective effervescence. And it's this emotional contagion, this awe that occurs when people come together in new and stimulating and meaningful ways. And here's a simple example. When I was a young guy, you probably won't be able to relate to this at all. You'll think I'm making this up. When I was a young guy, you had to save your money to buy a record album. And once you got that record album, everybody would come to your house. You'd listen to the record. You'd flip the side over. You'd listen to the second side. You'd read the lyrics on the liner notes. You'd sing. You'd have a little party.
Right.
Then you'd get some pizza.
It was an experience.
It was a shared experience. Now, today, we have millions and millions of people who experience the world by themselves through their earbuds. They consume all of their TV, movie, music, books, everything, culture by themselves. And yet, this idea of craving the shared experiences has not gone away. It's part of the human fabric. And what you've done with your business is exactly what we should be doing. And again, this is something AI can't touch. This is us bringing people together and creating this collective effervescence. We're creating awe. So I challenge your listeners to think about, what would your marketing look like if your plan was add more awe?
I love that. It's so relevant because it almost seems counterintuitive. It's like a world everybody's going to use the AI tools, and you want me to post kind of unfiltered videos on the internet? Okay, but it makes so much sense. You kind of want to just go in that direction, be like, we're going to be the human brand. What do you say to some? And you've been in marketing at Fortune 100 level companies, and I've seen the list of your clients on your website. You deal with some of the biggest brands. There's always someone who listens to this that will say, yeah, well, Dave, like, we can't. In my industry, we just can't do X.
Yeah.
Or this isn't going to work because we're a Fortune 500,
Yeah.
cybersecurity company. So
Yeah.
how do you handle that objection?
Usually they're right. And here, because it's just so, I mean, if you look at the opportunity in the world, it's made for small to medium sized companies. But let me tell you something. I gave a workshop recently to one of the biggest consumer product companies in the world, and they were interested in brand communities. I wrote a book about brand communities called Belonging to the Brand, and they invited me. They said, this is great. We need to understand this. This is the future. So one of the great, massive advantages of brand communities is if you do something in a community that's so cool, so worthy, that people talk about it outside the community, you have this organic advocacy. And that's better than any advertising you could ever have. This brand manager took me aside. He said, I understand this. This is really great. But when other people carry your message, how do we control it? That's the world, man.
It's crazy. Right. Yeah. Like, how do you,
I can't fix that. I
yeah.
can't.
Right. Like, we were just on vacation, and a friend of mine said, oh, you're going to be in Aruba with the kids. Go to this restaurant. The restaurant wasn't like, here's how to make sure that they say the right thing about our restaurant.
Yeah. Right.
I love. Oh, wait. So, but you said, okay. So your message. So basically, eventually, you reach this point as a brand where you're too big, and you're not going to be able to do this type of stuff.
They really, I talked about this infrastructure of fear, or the scaffolding of fear. I mean, here's another little example. I was working with a brand manager at another big global company, and so they've got a big, a universal contract with an advertising agency. So every advertising and marketing idea they have has to go through the agency. So she read my books, she connected with me. She wanted to do experiments with new types of content, with connecting to their customers, in new ways. She takes us to the agency. They come back with a proposal. It's an ad. And she said, they don't know this, but I worked at a different company 3 years ago. They gave me the same proposal 3 years ago at a different company. She said, I am so frustrated. I'm ready to either break all the rules and get fired or quit. So that's the fear, right? That's the scaffolding of boring that is in place for a lot of big companies. And that's a hard work. That's a hard world. I was on an advisory board for a big pharma company, and they wanted to do this experiment with social media. And everything we said, the lawyer said no. We're sitting at this table, and it was me and the brand managers and the ad agency, and everything we said, they said no. And I knew what the regulations said. I knew where the boundaries were. Finally, it got to the point in the meeting. I was an outsider. I blurted out, did you even read the laws? Now, it was kind of embarrassing that I said that, but it was true. They hadn't read the laws or they didn't understand the laws. They just didn't want to change. They just didn't want to add, any layer of risk. So, I mean, the big companies, it's hard. I don't know how they're going to adjust to this world.
Are there good parts of AI? Like a lot of people in our world are really excited about it for.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're living in a time of magic. Um, there's no other word to say it. It's just absolute magic. What I've been writing about for 15, 16 years now is this intersection of marketing and technology and humanity. And there's never been a more interesting time. And I love art, and I dabble in watercolor painting. I'd love to be an artist, but I'm not an artist and I'm not an illustrator. And yet I can have like art illustrating ideas on my blog it can be beautiful and diverse and subtle and send messages about what I'm trying to address that day in incredible ways. It's become like a search engine for my imagination. AI gives voice to the voiceless. It makes non-artists artists and non-writers writers, and it can unleash all this potential and all this creativity. And the other thing I think we need to embrace is I saw this study where they were looking at the impact of AI on researchers, and not surprisingly, when they started using AI, the researchers had more discoveries, more patents, and more product launches. But the most interesting part of this study was that the very best researchers who used AI became even better. It created more distance between the experts and the more average people. So, that's why I'm saying, like, what are you afraid of? You got to embrace this. If you're great, it's going to make you greater. If you want to explore new parts of creativity, it allows you to do that. It can challenge you and stretch you. I mean, I wrote my own book, but one of the ways I used it was when the book was completely finished, I uploaded it to ChatGPT and to Claude, and I said, "What's missing?" And I'll be darned, they both came back with the same answer. And they said, "You need to have a chapter on measurement." And in my original outline, I had a chapter on measurement and decided not to do it because it was too hard. I was getting too tired. But I wrote the chapter, and it made it a better book.
Yeah, that's a great example. A great gut check. You could even make a world where, like, I'm just thinking on the fly of like, okay, this guy's telling me that the future, you got to create these really human driven campaigns to stand out. Your marketing has to have that human element to it. The way you're going to stand out is by being human. I would go to ChatGPT or Claude after listening to this podcast and basically tell it everything about my brand, tell it about everything about my competitors, and say, hey, I'm really into this guy's theory. Here's what he's written about, right? I'm interested in this theory about creating human. Here's how we do marketing today. Help me generate a list of 10 ideas or 10 ways we could bring more, human touches and elements into our marketing. And I bet I would get some good ideas from that. So you're not saying, hey, don't use AI. We're saying, well, the output needs to be, you can use these tools to enable you to be a better, more creative marketer, but the creative stuff is what's going to win. And
Well,
so you got to.
I know you said you hadn't got through the entire book yet, but there's a chapter at the end about using AI. How do we use AI to be disruptive?
Yeah. What was it? This is a more of a personal question, but was it tempting to use, like, you've put out 11 books now, got to figure that, Lee Child is is using AI to write,
Yeah.
the next novels. What was it tempting to, if I was thinking about writing a book, how would I not think about AI? Was there something you wanted to put on this personally? Was it tempting to use AI?
Look, so I did an experiment last year where I wrote this little book that people loved many years ago called Social Media Explained. And I wrote the first edition, I wrote the second edition. It was time for a third edition. And writing a book, it can be just a completely exhausting experience. It takes everything out of me. I thought there's got to be a better way. I am going to write an AI driven book. I'm going to use every trick in the book to write this book the easiest way I can. So I started using it, and it was just a complete failure. And the reason is because AI is like, it's like a puppy dog. It bounces around. It just wants to please you. And so you put in a query, and it looks through billions of points of data throughout all of history and comes up with the best average answer to try to, win your heart. And the best average answer of anything is a terrible book. To me, a book it's about insights. It's about a revelation. Here's something I learned. I want you to learn it. Here's an experience I had. This will help you. Here's a story from my world that helps explain this. And for me, I mean, writing is natural and enjoyable anyway. And it just was forced. And my books have dad jokes in them. And that's part of my personality, maybe. There's humor in the books. So I just gave up. It was a terrible experience. It was just better and faster for me to just do it, myself. And so now when I wrote this new book, it's just, I just went back to my old process, my old sort of hunting and gathering of stories, statistics, examples, case studies, and weaved them together in a new book. And actually, it's an interesting question you have, Dave, because a book to me is my legacy. It's something very, very important to me, and something I take very seriously. Most business books today are a blog post with 240 pages of fluff. There's no fluff in my books. And
I wrote a book. I wrote a book, and it could have been a blog post. And one of the comments was, there's a 1-star review on Amazon, and the guy wrote, should have been a blog post.
Oh boy. Well, sorry for kicking that crusted turd, Dave.
No, I'm doing the right thing now. You've written 11 books for a reason.
But and I was more inspired to really, really work on the craft. And I just thought, I'm going to make this better than ever. I'm going to make the writing better. I'm going to make the humor better. I'm going to make the stories better. I'm going to make the editing better. And so now that I think about it, it's sort of ironic that it was the least AI book I possibly could have written.
I mean, it's like, you want you didn't want to, it sounds like you didn't want to make another, make a mass produced piece of work, right? It would be very
AI
easy.
did help me with the research, some research.
Oh, sure.
Like I had some holes to fill in terms of like specific case studies where I wanted to feature like a nonprofit or small businesses. And so, Perplexity was good helping me.
That's it. I mean, that's an amazing way to do it. Like that's an example of like you're selling yourself short and you're being silly if you're not going to use the best research tool in the world to like comb through the internet.
I mean, certainly the message of the book is like, where do humans fit in the world?
Okay, I want to run through this. So Mark, in the book, Mark has the title of the book is Audacious, but he's a great marketer himself, and so the Audacious is actually the framework in the book. And so so I'm just going to run through these for you at home. So A is authentic, genuine human stories. U is about being unique. Original perspectives that AI can't generate. D is daring. A is accountable. C is create. What?
I don't know where you're getting this. This kit must have come from AI.
Yeah, this is my Claude. This is my Claude research. This is not
made
true.
It up. That's a hallucination.
Get out of here.
Nope.
This is amazing. We're on a podcast talking about AI.
Never heard of it.
Wow.
But thank you for playing.
Damn.
Let me tell you the real framework.
That's amazing.
That is really amazing. You have just become a case study, my friend.
How great is that?
Yeah.
What is true? Do you even like was Rutgers is not true. He's not from
No,
Knoxville.
I
No,
teach
no, I'm just kidding.
I teach at Rutgers, but the framework is this. So I got to meet the greatest creative minds in the world. And I was looking, okay, how are they breaking through the boring? How are they becoming the signal over the noise? Is there a pattern? Is there a framework? And I found that there is. And what they did was they said, okay, here's your marketing, here's your story. What is your marketing story? It's the narrative, it's where you tell it, and it's who tells it. And if you disrupt one of those things, now you're commanding attention because you're doing something, very, very different. So, and there's examples and case studies for each of these, but those are the kind of the three big buckets of the book. How do we disrupt the story? How do we disrupt where the story is told? How do we disrupt the storyteller?
Beautiful. That's so funny.
And you don't even know where to go at this point.
No, it's just like a perfect example of like, it's just everything you just mentioned. Like you gotta be able to like check some of this stuff, right? Like that was a perfect example that played out in real
I
time.
would be embarrassed to put out a framework that spelled out audacious. That would be so contrived.
I was gonna say
Your question should have been, Mark, how did you embarrass yourself this way?
your car doesn't have a period U period D period A. You don't have an audacious like bumper sticker on your. I
No,
was expecting
sure
like
don't.
get a sticker or
Sorry to
something after
disappoint
that.
you.
I should have known once you needed to put your own dad jokes in the book and put your own fingers on it. I think that's a good tell. You mentioned measurement before, and anytime we talk about concepts like this, being human, building a brand, being memorable, obviously the question is, okay, Mark, but how do I measure that? Like we did this thing and I didn't get 6 new sales in the last month. Like this is not working. How do you think about measurement for something like this?
Well, measurement is so hard in the marketing world in many cases, especially when it comes to brand marketing. What I did with the chapter on measurement in this book was to confine myself to the idea of audacity and risk taking. So kind of the premise of the book is if you step out of your comfort zone and you start pushing, outside of the normalized dull of your industry, that you'll be rewarded over time. But how do we know we're doing this? So the framework really is your own observation about how new is this really? How much of a risk is this really? There's 5 different measures, and so when I came up with this concept, I actually took it to some agencies. I said, "Would you use something like this? Does this make sense?" And they said, "Yeah, this does make sense." And they added 2 comments. Is that one, that this would really be sort of, it's not a standard measure, it's a relative measure, that if you're in an industry that's just so conservative and so boring, just moving one little step up could be massive. It could be a huge risk. That was the first one. The second one, the second comment, which I think is absolutely brilliant, and it would be an amazing experiment. You could take this measure and you could see what other companies are doing, and a lot of people say, "Hey, Mark, ever since I read this book, now I'm like noticing Audacious. I'm noticing the things, kind of the content and the marketing that's doing like what you said." You could put that through my filter and put their competitors through the filter, and then see what's the impact on the relative financial performance. That would be super interesting. My favorite case study in the book is probably Liquid Death. The guy that started, which is, I know you probably have some listeners outside of America. You probably don't know what Liquid Death is, but it's more or less a startup, 4 or 5 years old. It's now the fastest growing beverage in America, and it just disrupts everything that we've been talking about. I mean, when I took my first marketing class, I don't remember much about it, but I'm sure the first rule of marketing was never associate your brand with death. So they just start with wrong
Right.
and build from there.
Yeah.
And
And everybody said you can't. How can you sell water? It's literally water. It's water and seltzer.
so think about it this way. The founder of Liquid Death didn't get into that business because he was obsessed with water. He got into that business because this was a completely boring vertical, that everything was the same. It was clear. It was wholesome. It was clear plastic packaging. And they had names like Rainbow Springs, right? And the whole world is just hungry, or in this case, thirsty, for something new and something disruptive and bold. Now, think about the automotive industry. It's all the same. My favorite example is pizza. Why shouldn't pizza just be nuts? It's a celebration. It's crazy. Young people love it. The most innovative thing we have in America is nobody out pizzas the hut. What does that even mean? Almost every industry is so freaking boring. Now, don't even get me started about B2B. So all you need to do is just be one notch above boring, and you're making progress.
Okay, so I love the reason I love the liquid death example is because I think that if you want to do this, and I feel like what you're talking about, it's not like you're going to do one single one-off creative campaign that is different. It's like, no, let's fundamentally, like the reason Liquid Death worked is because that was why they launched the brand. They thought about all those things from the beginning. It's not just the fact that it's this cool can and it's water and they got fun names, but like everything down to like the micro copy. Like, if you look at the back of the can and it says something about like, how you should recycle the can or something, even that copy is fantastic.
Everything. Yeah.
So the big opportunity, right, Mark, is like if we can just like press pause and rethink the whole brand strategy, because we need to start with a story that reflects this position, not just like a one-off, marketing campaign. We're not just going to run one LinkedIn ad with like a kind of blurry image.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, okay, so I mean, an interesting intellectual question might be, could Coca-Cola do that? Now, and what Mike Cesario, the founder of Liquid Death, says in my book, he said, literally, there's no way we could compete in the water business because Coke and Pepsi are in the water business and they could copy anything we do. You can't have a special flavor. You can't have a special ingredient. The only thing you have is your brand. That's it. It's the only way to disrupt against, the big brands. And I think for Coke or Pepsi to pull something like that off, it'd have to be a sub brand because, they've got just too much to lose. It would be too confusing, right? To have a disruptive brand, you've got to be a disruptor. Another favorite example is Nutter Butter. Do you know what I'm talking about with the Nutter Butter videos on TikTok?
No.
Oh my gosh.
No.
It's insane.
I'm looking right now.
Do yourself a favor. And
why does
Google...
Nutter Butter have 1.6 million followers on TikTok?
Yeah, that's right. So
official Nutter Butter.
Their videos on TikTok are like an LSD fever dream. And you look at these videos and you think, what in God's name are they doing? This has nothing to do with cookies. And their sales have quadrupled in the last 12 months. Again,
insane.
Because what is a Nutter Butter? It's a forgotten brand.
My grandmother's favorite cookie. I don't know.
Yeah. That would be their good slogan. Something that something that you traded for an Oreo as a child or something.
Interesting. That's a really good example because
it's the whole cookie industry. It's the same. It's just the same, and it's ripe for disruption.
But like if you go to their website, it's not doesn't feel like their TikTok stuff at all.
Not at all.
I went to their website and it's the Nutter Butter website that you would expect. So this is a good example based on what I asked you before. It's like, where do you start with this? It seems like my 1 minute knowledge of this is they were like, let's go hard on this crazy angle just on TikTok, and that's going to raise the awareness for. We don't need to change the whole brand to do this.
Yeah, I think there's two things, because one of the ideas here. It's a main idea of the book is that, and you sort of hinted at this, it's not a stunt,
Right.
right? It's got to be sustainable. So it's going to be really interesting to watch Nutter Butter as a case study because they're putting out all this bizarre content, but there's got to be like a storyline. There's got to be some through line. So like on Reddit, there are discussion groups trying to figure out what are these names? What are these? But at some point, you got to have a payoff
Yeah.
as to how this comes together. Number two, at some point, there's got to be an integration with the main brand, even if it's like a hat tip, like somewhere on the package, like one of their main images for some reason is a shrimp, like a shrimp cocktail shrimp.
Yeah.
So there's got to be some little hat tip, a secret message for children on the packaging where maybe mom and dad don't know what this is, but we are on TikTok and we know what this means. So there's got to be some kind of integration for it to be sustainable.
Okay, let's talk about B2B. So people love these examples. You said, don't get me started on B2B, but let's spend a couple minutes on there because how would you, maybe let's just riff on this on, I don't know if you have an example on this or not, but maybe we can just riff on this. Like if I'm a B2B company, if I'm a B2B manufacturing company or, fintech company, like how can I put something like this? Like how should I be thinking about this? Like, yeah, I love this guy. This episode is really helpful. This is interesting. I want to do this, but like my company makes payroll software.
Well, first of all, in all of my books, I work hard to have diverse examples. B2B, B2C, small businesses, big budget, no budget, nonprofits. So there's something for everybody in these books. And I go out of my way, like I said, to make sure that, there's something in there for everybody. I think another misconception is like somehow people that work in B2B, they're not real people. They don't really like things the things that other people like. Now, I understand there are differences in terms of the sales cycle, maybe the complexity of the sale or whatever. But in terms of awareness, the idea of capturing attention, especially if you're a disruptor, why are the rules different? People are hungry for something cool and new and maybe even bizarre. We talk about, we use Nutter Butter example, and I tend to default by saying, Gen Z, young people. Gen Z are running businesses now. Gen Z, they are the procurement department now. We've got Gen Z people been voted into the American Congress.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I just had this discussion with our team. We're sending out an event email and we wanted to write an email that was like, hey, we know the event ticket is expensive. Here's how to like get your boss. A bunch of people were like, oh, I need my boss I'm not going to pay this out of my pocket. I need my boss to do it. And so we wrote an email and it was very stiff. And I said, well, why is this email so stiff? And they said, well, we got to make it appeal to the boss. I'm like, well, who do you think the boss is? The boss isn't a robot. The boss is also a human. We can have fun with this. I think that's okay.
Yeah. Awareness is the most precious commodity. And you want to create something that makes them go, oh my gosh, I never saw anything like this before. Of course, we need to be involved in this. Wow. Who are these people? Spark that curiosity.
Mark, do you think that the marketer in the company can push the company to do this, or does it have to come from the founder level? And obviously, let's remove the fortune. Let's remove Nutter, but say like the average person listening to this is like a VP of marketing at a $17 million revenue company, right?
So there's actually a chapter in the book. It's at the end of the book. Then the chapter is titled "The Most Important Chapter in the Book." Because throughout the whole book, people are saying, okay, I'm fired up. I'm getting it. I'm ready to go. But then by the end of the book, you're thinking, okay, now how do I do this and not get fired? And that's what this chapter is about. So both of your points are relevant, that the leader of the company controls the culture. And your culture is your marketing. That's what's going to show up in the world. If you're a button-down pharmaceutical company, that's how your marketing is going to look. If you're kind of a wild and crazy startup, ready to do anything to help your customers, that's what's going to show up. So on one level, yes, the person at the top of the company that owns the budget and the strategy, they also own the culture. And there's no such thing as a grassroots changing of culture. If you're down there, marketing manager, just hoping for a change, you've got to somehow get to the people at the top. Now, how do you do that? It's all about experimentation. And for me, I built my whole career on pilot programs. Pilot programs, so you go to your boss and you say, hey, there's this new thing. We could take a little bit of money and we could try this. And we're going to do like a 6-month program, and it'll end in 6 months and be able to evaluate. So you build this thing, and you build in some quick wins, and you do a good job communicating it. And usually in 6 months, your boss is gone anyway. They forgot about it. And now you're just doing it. But what I find in most companies is that if you have a really good leader, that person wants to stay ahead. they they have a mandate to clobber the competition. And if you have some new idea because you read this Audacious book, and okay, that makes a whole lot of sense. Let's give it a little try. Between, the internet and social media and AI, it costs almost nothing to do pilots today. Going back to the liquid death example, they did a pilot program. They imported, they built a company before they even had a product. They launched the product on Facebook just to see if people would buy it. They didn't even have a product. They brought in a few thousand cans from Europe. What they found is, ooh, the bars love it. All right, didn't know that. Let's go with that. And so it costs almost nothing to pilot and launch that product. I also look at this idea of around change from two other perspectives. One is, what if you're the leader and you do want to change the culture? And the other one, what if you're a freelancer? What if you're an outsider? How do you get people to adopt ideas that are a little bit more courageous?
There's this company, they're called WellHub, and they're like a HR benefits type of company. And they're B2B, and they did a podcast, like a narrative style scripted with actors style podcast called Murder in HR. And they hired actors, and it
Wow.
actually got to be super popular. I think it was one of the top podcasts in the like mystery crime category. Wink, wink, nod, nod happens to be put on by like a B2B, benefits company. And I think that that's an idea that seems to fit in this bucket. Is like, let's take a chance on something. And, I think where marketers get stuck is like, we can't go do the crazy thing. Like, we can't stop everything and then go do the crazy thing, and the crazy thing doesn't work out and now we're screwed. It's like, we got to do that in parallel. I like the pilot program,
One of the
positioning.
case studies in the book is a cybersecurity company. And I mean, it's just so boring and so complicated. And they found a way to explain what they do and how they do it through a card game. They created a card game that's now used as a teaching school at universities, by the government. They're selling expansion packs to this game on Amazon. They also created a comic book, and the comic book became so popular. It's being licensed by a comic book distributor now. So again, and it's just a B2B company that just is trying something different. And again, B2B isn't any different than B2C. It's just people like comic books. They like to play games. They like to learn in a new way that makes it easy to understand. So I think the whole imaginary wall between that is sort of melting away.
Yeah, I think people look, you meet somebody new, the very first question they ask you is like, "Oh, hey, Mark, nice to meet you. What do you do for work?" Like I think it's always kind of been my pitch in B2B, at least. We put a lot of self-worth value into like what we do for work. And so I think in B2B, you just need to maybe make more content as it relates to that person at work versus, buying comic books.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark, this was amazing. I guess, I got my hand in the cookie jar. Like I probably owe you finishing your book now. I'm gonna go read the 7 steps of the Audacious framework and I'll report back. I'll give you a
Yeah,
grade
do
on
that.
each one.
Do that.
But I wanna so obviously go check out Mark's stuff, businessesgrow.com, or just Google him, Mark Schaefer. I would go get Marketing Rebellion and read Audacious. This is like the most important topic right now, is like, how do we as marketers stay relevant in this world of AI? And Mark has a great perspective on it. But I just want to leave with this quote. This is early in Audacious, but this is the crux of what Mark talks about. And I think this is such a powerful thing to leave with. And this is what the job of marketing is. I've spent nearly 2 decades researching and writing about one crucial problem. How can our marketing messaging become the signal above the noise in a world of oversaturated content? That is kind of the one question that I want to leave people with. Put that on a post-it note, pause this, and like bring this back to your team. Question everything inside of your company. I love the book, The Score Takes Care of Itself by Bill Walsh. And he has this quote about when he went to the 49ers. He was like, the mantra of a team, the right mantra for a team is like, the worst thing you can say is, oh, that's the way we've always done it, right? Now's a great time to question everything and to stand out and hopefully be audacious. Mark Schaefer, thanks for hanging out with me. I'll continue to follow you. Love
Thank
your stuff.
you.
And you're a great
Well,
resource for us. So thank you.
this has been a great conversation, and thanks for all your great questions, and thanks for thinking of me.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.